guys, Jack here. Before we get started, a big thank you to all of our sponsors on Patreon. If you guys want to go support the channel, just $1 or more will get you early access to all of our content as well as other special features. And if you just clicked on this video in your recommendation feed or discovered it out of pure fucking nowhere, congratulations! Your soul belongs to me! Nah, just kidding. If you want, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and hit that notification bell. We got all sorts of content from reviews, skits, and all kinds of wacky videos. So without further ado, enjoy the show. The following is a fan-based video review under fair use. All of the King Kong video formats are owned by their copyright holders and respective distributors. Please support the official releases and purchases. Hey guys, what's up? It's BigJackFilms here, and welcome back to the King Kong review series, and I'm starting to think I have a problem. Yeah, much like my collection of books, I've been attempting to collect the King Kong films on as many home video formats as possible. I don't own every version of each film, but I figured I'd show you what I have so far and their unique features, which we take for granted nowadays. So without further ado, as the old VHS promos would say...
Coming soon to own on video cassette.
Now, while obviously I won't count 35mm films shown in theaters, let's start with something we're all familiar with on this show, with 8mm film. There are, of course, several fan films in this format, but a lot of the King Kong movies were released in limited numbers on both 8mm, Super 8mm, and even 16mm, for which several film collectors have even taken the initiative to restore the original King Kong with the censored scenes, since these prints were taken from the 1938 censored version, reissued by the MPAA at the time. With the 8mm prints, it's hard to say whether or not they were censored. Full films such as King Kong, Son of Kong, Mighty Joe Young, King Kong vs. Godzilla, King Kong Escapes, and King Kong 1976 were all released on these reels, but some were released in what are called digest films. These are abridged cuts designed to fit on affordable reels of 8mm and Super 8mm film. They were the most common from the 1960s through the 1980s, the most famous example being Star Wars and Jaws, for most of these were released by Castle Films and Ken Films. The only problem is that the machines are obsolete and hard to get in working order. These prints I'm showing were taken from various sources online, as Super 8 films have proven to be collector's items. But man, I would love to own a print of King Kong on this format. Well guys, as a surprising update as I was editing this episode, I actually managed to get an 8mm copy of the original King Kong. I found it on eBay for a reasonable price, though unfortunately I had to pay a little extra in shipping since I'm a dumbass and I realized it was coming from the UK and not the United States. But hey, it's all worth it to show on this episode. It's a silent version on 2 reels, and I had it sent to a scanner to digitize the film. A major thank you to Mr. Robertson for providing the scans, and it's great to see it in this format. And honestly makes a great piece in my Kong collection. Maybe someday I'll find more, but for now, this is as good as it's gonna get. Now, 35mm theatrical prints have been common on auction websites and have been seeked out by private collectors, fans, and scanners who still watch it on the classic film projector, and some even scan them for fans on the web, like originaltrilogy.net. From here going forward, the 35mm prints of King Kong is the master for what subsequent video formats would be using in their efforts to bring the theater experience home. Now, by the late 1970s, the home video market began with 4 formats at the time: Betamax, VHS, CED, and Laserdisc, which at the time was actually called DiscoVision. How about that? The first I want to start off with is the CED, or Capacitance Electronic Disc, which is kind of like Laserdisc, which uses lasers to read the information, but the CED is exactly like a vinyl record with microscopic grooves with a needle inside the player, used to get the signal from. Unfortunately, I don't own a machine, but thanks to Cinemassacre, they showed the quality of the format, which to be honest, isn't very good. Unfortunately, the disc inside the jockey is prone to wear and tear, and because it's like a vinyl record, it's likely to start skipping on you, which is never suitable for home viewing experiences. However, I do own the original Kong and the 76 remake on the format, and one thing I can say is that the artwork and designs of the jockeys are unique and very lovely to look at. The original Kong has a little bit of a circus quality to it, while the 76 remake had to be split into two parts due to its length. I'm not sure if 76 was shown in its original widescreen presentation or full screen, but maybe someday I can show off the quality in an update video.
Oh, okay. Take your time. Who gives a shit that Radar's got the ape headed in our direction?
Next, we have Laserdisc, and to be honest, this format is a lot of fun to collect as a hobby. And the best part is, I have a machine to play them on. So let's see how the original King Kong holds up with the 60th anniversary edition released in 1993, which was actually advertised pretty heavily back then.
Look out! It's Kong!
It's King Kong's 60th anniversary, and the Big Ape's planning a party he can really sink his teeth into. You can win a 4-day trip to New York City.
It's the thrill of a lifetime.
Run to your nearest retailer for details.
And to be honest, the quality seen here is actually really damn good. Hell, I'd say it's even better than the DVDs. The original was released several times on this format, and for good measure. There was even a Criterion collection that had the very first audio commentary hosted by film historian Ronald Haver.
This is an ingenious bit here too, because the Kong is not really there lifting up that log. There's a chain hoist on the other end of the log, which is lifting it up and rolling it around.
The movie was later released on other editions, including a double feature with Son of Kong, and even that got its own release along with Mighty Joe Young. King Kong vs. Godzilla and King Kong Escapes were also released on Laserdisc, but only in Japan at the time. However, the one I really wanted is a rare one to come by, that of course being the 1976 remake to add to my collection, and from what I heard, while the quality differs, it's just cool to have, especially to make comparisons on different formats. They had planned to release it during the early days of Laserdisc in the late 70s as DiscoVision, but it was cancelled quite early on. Not sure why, honestly. Not to mention, King Kong Lives is another rare one, though at the time of its home video release, the Laserdisc version was heavily marketed.
I ain't selling blood, Doc. I'm selling the whole damn monkey.
Now, while Laserdiscs and CED were at odds as the main attractions of the early format wars, in Japan there was a format that's been forgotten about to time known as VHD. Now, while I don't have a copy of the Kong films released, nor a machine obviously, and if you want a brief history of VHD, check out Phalus's review of the Ghostbusters video formats. Short version is that VHD is basically Japanese CED as far as I can find, and the only Kong films released on the format that I could find were the original, 1976, and King Kong Lives. So not much to say, and hey, most have forgotten the format anyways.
Well, every legend has a basis of truth.
But during the format wars was of course the videotape market between Betamax and VHS, and this time around I can actually show you the results. First off, with Betamax, the one thing I need to start off saying is that mine doesn't even fucking work. I ordered this offline for $50, but the damn thing didn't want to play the tapes. It had massive button issues, and one of the belts was damaged. For $50 to show off in a video? That sucks ass, honestly. But at least you could see what it looks like with its wooden paneling, and buttons like these look retro as hell, and maybe due to it being an older model is why the tapes don't work. So my only option was to turn to a home video restoration company for help, and as you can see, they did a great job with both copies of Kong 76 that I own on Betamax. The first was released in 1980 and was put on 2 tapes, much like the CED version. But in 1986, when King Kong Lives was coming out, Paramount reissued the 76 film on a single tape, which, to be honest, does lessen the quality, given it was probably recorded in an extended play. Still, it's cool to watch it on a now defeated format. The original King Kong was also released on this format a few times, but unfortunately I don't have any copies as of yet to show. Now, while VHS eventually won the battle in the late 80s, believe it or not, Beta was of better quality. How the hell did this happen? Well, it was surprisingly the porn industry that used VHS to record and distribute adult films due to the cheaper cost of the format, and at that point, every married man in America and around the world bought a VCR for research purposes, creating that industry that we all know so well. I guess that explains why copies of King Dong did so well in the 80s.
Did you ever meet anyone before whose life was saved by Deep Throat?
But now it's time to move on to, of course, VHS, and I have several Kong films on this format and the many editions that came with it. Starting with the original, one of the first tapes was this one by The Nostalgia Merchant, released in 1978. It's pretty much a rip of both the Betamax and, from what I think given the quality, potential 8mm prints. For the longest time, several companies released the original on VHS, and it might have been due to the potential leak of the film into the public domain. But that was later intercepted by RKO being bought out by Ted Turner and eventually bought out by Warner Brothers.
We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it with all of you.
Hell, RKO themselves released the original a few times on VHS. They also released Son of Kong using a promo still from the original to market it, which is sadly a huge sense of false advertising, but hey, King Kong vs. Godzilla did that too. By the late 80s and early 90s, Turner Entertainment put out a few editions on VHS. The first one here is sealed and was advertised as being the full uncut version completely restored. Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young were also released by Turner, as well as a colorized version on VHS and Laserdisc, which I should finally talk about. Back in the 80s, Ted Turner's way of remarketing old films for a new generation was to colorize black and white movies. The fear was due to kids not having much interest in classic films in the pre-Technicolor era. So Ted took several films, most notably from RKO, colorized many classics from Kong, Joe, and even Cooper and Schotzak's The Most Dangerous Game. But at that time, it was considered pretty sacrilegious to colorize old films and destroy film history. And one of the advocators was, believe it or not, Really? Really? This guy? This guy? Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I think Ted tried to corrupt him.
Do you think we'll really make a lot of money?
Well, enough to pay him back for these clothes anyway.
But thankfully, this idea was eventually scrapped, and the classics were later released on their native black and white quality, and the original King Kong was released countless more times in the 90s by Warner Brothers. And with the original films out of the way, next came the kaiju films of the 60s, with King Kong vs. Godzilla released twice on VHS. The first being in the 80s and being one of my first introductions to Godzilla in the 90s, renting this tape from Blockbuster countless times. However, nowadays, kaiju collectors have made some of these tapes quite rare to find, even on the secondhand market. But I do own a later release which had a very interesting history. It doesn't use images of Kong and Godzilla in the film itself, but instead the suits from King Kong 1976 and Godzilla 1984. This led to mass confusion that Toho had made a Heisei-era remake, given the Heisei era was mostly never released outside of Japan. Not until the 1998 film came out and Sony released the Heisei era for the first time with an English dub. What the hell is this? Get the fuck out of here. But when people watched it, that was the 1962 film, and got a bit of public backlash for false advertising. The cover also uses the original Kong on the back. Confusing overall, yes, but a cool piece of artwork nonetheless. However, would you believe that King Kong Escapes was never released on any home video format in the US? Not until the advent of DVD did the movie get released in 2005 to cash in on the Peter Jackson film. The only way for fans to watch it was to purchase Japanese imports on VHS and Laserdisc, much like some of the uncut or Heisei-era Godzilla films. Now, of course, let's move on to the Dino De Laurentiis films. With Kong 76, I own a few, if not too many copies to count. The first being released around the same time as the 86 Betamax reissue, even having the same cover in comparison. It was also released later in the 90s in 1991 and 1996, with two different variations of the classic poster. The film has seen several VHS editions all over the world, and the covers range from great to just awkward. But two prints I have that are pretty cool are two separate cuts of the film that I had recorded personally. The first is the AMC cut, which was minorly censored for public television, cutting out a lot of the swearing and the mild nudity. If the print I have is of lower quality, it's because it was the last airing of the full screen version before they switched to the current HD prints, which they still censored and pitched to the audio to match the original cut. AMC even celebrated new prints for the 40th anniversary in 2016. But one I own is a VHS copy of the extended TV cut, which was ripped from a 16mm print. It's a rare piece, but it's kinda cool. However, the print is a lot more darker than the broadcast recordings from the time.
Come on. Listen, have a drink for me at the Brown Derby.
Now, King Kong Lives, despite being heavily marketed to the Laserdisc format, it was also put out on VHS at the time. While I don't own the original VHS tape, I have a later one released in 1996 by HGV. This was one tape I've owned since I was a kid, and I'm not gonna lie, the artwork is great. Even though the front is a total lie with Kong in New York, they might as well have been showing off the prologue, but whatever. However, the original VHS tape of King Kong Lives actually is a subplot in the 1998 cult classic The Big Hit, starring Mark Wahlberg.
We're going to inform you that you've had our copy of King Kong Lives out for over 2 weeks now. Return it immediately, or we will have you killed.
Now, due to the death of VHS around 2006, Kong 05 was never released on VHS. But I got word that it was released on 2 tapes in some minor countries, much like most long movies back in the day. Keep in mind though, everyone, the Kong films were released countless times on almost every format all over the world with different variations of languages, companies, and artwork. And I'll admit, despite my addiction to collecting Kong-related items, there are way too many to count, and this episode could go on forever. And that's the last thing I want due to the time and effort for this episode to get out. So maybe someday I'll do a follow-up when I obtain more copies. However, there's a few formats that the movies, as far as I know, have never been released on. I have never seen the movies on either VVC 2000, which was like VHS but in the style of an audio cassette tape, Mini DVD, which was a novelty for things like Hasbro, releasing clips included with Star Wars products, Movie CD, which is deader than Windows Vista, as well as DVHS, which is essentially HD VHS tapes that died out when DVD took over. Much like how Game Boy Advance Video was the last stand for Game Boy to compete with other formats before being turned into the Nintendo DS. And no, Kong was never released on Game Boy Advance Video. Thank God. Somebody once told me. However, the last tape format that Kong was released on was, surprisingly, Video 8. For those unaware, Video 8 was a novelty, but kind of an interesting format, releasing movies on small recorded tapes that were mostly used for family home movies. Hell, my first movies were made on this format. But I guess as a way to conserve space, studios thought that this format was much easier to release films on. But the format was more used on air travel back in the day, given they needed a machine that was lighter in weight to play movies on before the advent of digital technology. And as you can see, Kong 76 was released on this format, which has a sharper image than normal tapes. And if you're wondering where I obtained this copy of the film, the answer is...
God damn it, Preston, all you had to do was look her in the eye and lie.
I actually made this Video 8 of Kong 76 as a little experiment. None of the movies were ever released on this format, and from what I've researched, I really only wanted to explain the format, since when the hell am I ever gonna do that? Sorry to disappoint you all, but I thought it was a fun experiment. But hey, a slight little update, guys. I just checked eBay, and it turns out there's a listing for the original King Kong on Video 8. So yeah, it actually did turn out to be released on that format. Unfortunately, I can't afford to purchase the ad, but I figured I'd show pictures of it to give you an idea of what it looked like. Next up is a format that is mostly known in China, known as VCD, which is basically a lower quality version of DVD. It's more common in Asian countries and used for bootlegs mostly, but it is another funny format that most aren't aware of. My first time seeing a VCD was a bootleg of Jurassic Park 3 at a local Value Village. VCD covers use CD jewel cases to keep the discs in, much like audio or music CDs. But the majority of Kong movies were released on this format. 1933, 1976, and 2005 were released a few times in different countries, and the quality from what I've heard varies from okay to just downright terrible. Even rip-offs made it into the format with Bigfoot, which some countries is called King Kong 3? Good lord, I'm gonna have to talk about that sometime, aren't I? But thankfully, VCD eventually died out, and the way to watch movies that has been the most common to this day, and eventually won the format wars, was of course, DVD.
Bet you provide a great health plan!
Oh, DVDs. What can I say? It's been a definitive format for over 20 years, and almost every movie has been released on it. And with that, the majority of my King Kong movie and TV collection, let alone films in general, is on DVD, proudly displayed in my film shelf. But funny enough, the original King Kong was never released on DVD in North America until 2005 when the Peter Jackson movie was released. However, it was released in other countries first. Though some of the early covers range from okay to just downright awful, like this one with Kong on top of the Chrysler Building instead of the Empire State Building. Seriously, what the hell? Were they so similar to you that you couldn't recognize which building was what? On top of that, that's not Kong's building, that's for Cue the Winged Serpent to climb, you morons! But the first two Kong films released on DVD was King Kong vs. Godzilla in 2001, using the same Heisei-era VHS cover, and King Kong 1976 in 1999. But unfortunately, the original 1999 release is hard to come by nowadays, and can be quite pricey. This was more than likely due to the tragedy of 9/11, which the film, along with other movies that included the World Trade Center, were pulled from both home video shelves and TV syndication for a few years. It wasn't until the 2005 film that Paramount decided to re-release the 76 film on DVD once again, with a much less offensive cover, and by 2017, another variant of the same cover without Dwan. To this day, Kong 76 has never been released on Blu-ray in North America due to legal issues, yet it's common in other countries on the format. However, there is rumors that Shout Factory, having successful sales releasing Orca on Blu-ray with Paramount, have rumored to have been considering releasing Kong 76 on Blu-ray in North America as its own disc or as part of a rumored Dino De Laurentiis box set. Either way, it will most likely be a part of my collection in the future. My only suggestion is to release the extended TV cut with the theatrical version, because if Warner Brothers can release the extended TV cut of Superman on Blu-ray, why not Kong 76? Hell, I tried to obtain a cheap copy of Kong 76 on Blu-ray from an import in Germany, and unfortunately the damn thing won't fucking play on my Blu-ray player given it has region coding. Seriously, what the hell, Paramount? Release this fucking thing on Blu-ray already!
Yeah, tough to get them to do it anyway.
But going back to the original King Kong, the movie's first DVD outing in North America was of course 2005, November to be exact, and released in several variants. The first being the 2-disc special edition, and I'll be honest, this is one of the best DVDs I own in my collection. Not only is the quality of the film fantastic, but it includes a new audio commentary with archival interviews with Merian C. Cooper, Fay Wray, and a host track with Ray Harryhausen. Not to mention amazing bonus features on the second disc. There's 2 documentaries included, one being a biography on Merian C. Cooper called I'm King Kong, hosted by Alec Baldwin, and the making of Production 601, being one of the most detailed and fantastic documentaries on filmmaking I've ever seen. For a history of King Kong and essentially a filmmaking semester, as well as on stop-motion photography, it's definitely worth a watch for any Kong fan. This DVD was also released in a 3-movie box set with Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young, along with a steel case set with the 3 movies, and some cool mini posters and cards. I also own a single edition DVD, which while a cool variant, suffers from lacking the second disc with all the bonus features. Later on, the movie would also be released on a double feature set for the first time with the 1976 remake Together at Last. This would also be, as far as I know, the last time Kong 76 was released on DVD in North America. Unfortunately, Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young were only available on DVD in the 2005 3-movie box set, and I'm not sure if they were released separately. And while we're at it, before I forget, Mighty Joe Young was released on VHS and Disney DVD in 1999, but lacked any bonus features. And was it released on Blu-ray? Yes! But it was a Disney Club exclusive, making it pricey as fuck, unfortunately!
Where are we gonna get that kind of money?
At least it's on Disney+. Now, while King Kong vs. Godzilla was released in 2001, it was reissued in 2005 along with King Kong Escapes for the first time on North American home video by Universal, and eventually on Blu-ray with the same covers. However, the original Japanese cut of King Kong vs. Godzilla was finally released by the Criterion Collection in 2019 as part of the Showa-era Godzilla collector's set. King Kong Lives, however, is a rare breed around here nowadays, being only released on DVD once by 20th Century Fox in 2005, and to this day has never been re-released. Hell, the Fox DVD is pretty high in price given it's out of print. A lot of the reason why the De Laurentiis films have had a hard time being released here is probably due to most of Dino's films being acquired by Studio Canal, which is a European company that really has a hard time with North American movies in their ownership for some reason.
Money talks, Zach.
Now with The Mighty Kong, the VHS is sort of common for most who want to watch it, but as far as I know, it never came to DVD until late 2019. But the movie is so bad and copyright driven that it's better to just throw the damn thing in the dumpster. Now with the 2005 film, and holy shit, this movie has been released way too many times here in North America. The first one I owned being somewhat illegal, but also kind of fun to look back on collectors-wise on bootlegs. Now bear in mind, I in no way endorse or support bootleg or pirated goods. But with that said, it's more for the cover art of these things, which stem from lazy to honestly not half bad. More than likely, these covers were printed online, but they do show a variety that I can't really complain about. However, nowadays, old movies on what are called cam copies are actually kind of valuable in the market, given you hear the audience's reaction, and is essentially a preserved part of film history. Especially on VHS. Part of me would really like to own a copy of Jurassic Park, just for the audience's reaction alone. But the first official release of Jackson's Kong on DVD was a double disc with 2 different language versions, both in widescreen and full screen. Which I don't know why they couldn't fit the languages on one disc, but I'm not going to complain too much. To make comparisons, full screen is honestly terrible, having cut so much of the screen to make space on the ratio. But hey, if you want to make a custom VHS of the Peter Jackson remake, just connect a DVD player with a VCR and record away on extended play. Then there's the 2-disc special edition released in the spring of 2006, featuring a few awesome bonus features, including 2 documentaries on Skull Island and New York City, along with the amazingly detailed post-production diaries, which, while we're at it, the previous production diaries, they did release in a pretty cool box set. Then came the extended edition DVD set, which follows the tradition of the special extended editions of Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Aside from the 20 minutes added to the film, it features an overload of features, with an audio commentary, a new documentary, trailers, animatics, and even some PC features where you can read both the 2005 and even the 1996 script. This was also where I discovered the origins of the 1996 King Kong, as well as it being sort of an epilogue to the appendices on the Rings DVDs. The copy I owned came in a really nice box set with an amazing sculpture by Weta Workshop, as well as actually being autographed by Naomi Watts, who I met at the Toronto International Film Festival during the world premiere of The Impossible. And while other variations came and went, including on the failed HD DVD, which the 76 film was also released on, the failed Superbet DVD, and even UMD for the PSP, the movie finally made it to the Ultimate Edition Blu-ray, both in standard and 4K HD quality, and includes all the bonus features from previous releases all in one amazing set, and is reasonably priced and honestly worth buying. And to be honest, that's where we're at today. Most of the movies are more or less being released on the latest high-tech formats, from Kong Skull Island and the Monsterverse films on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K, to even being available on streaming services such as Disney+, HBO Max, among several others to count. There are so many ways to access these movies in any shape or form, and overall, King Kong has lived a healthy life for filmgoers and collectors alike. Despite the high and lows in quality, it's fun to see them in different variations, and worth seeking out if you're a hardcore collector of the Eighth Wonder like I am. Or if you have that one favorite film to buy on every machine that plays a movie. To that end, these formats are fun for collectors and worth a solid 9 out of 10. Personally, I can't really decide which format is the most fun or the best in general, but as long as I can see King Kong on the motion picture screen, I ain't gonna complain. So that's my entire collection of King Kong related video formats, and it was overall kind of fun to take a look at each format and decide which one was obsolete or perfection. But of course I want to hear from you guys. What's your favorite format to watch King Kong on? Whether it be Laserdisc, Betamax, VHS, DVD, or Blu-ray? Let me know in the comment section below. Now just a little bit of housekeeping, guys. We will no longer unfortunately be announcing when the next King Kong review episode will be. We also won't be dropping a tease of what our next episode will be about, so it gives us a bit of a variety of what to talk about next time. However, for the last bit of these teases, I can announce the next King Kong reviews, so join me next time for the season finale, when we take a little trip to Kong's other island. I'll see you guys there.